Hi there, I'm Amy or AWayfaringFrog and welcome back to the channel and welcome to another SPE build. This one is going to be an EA renovation and we are redoing the VATORE household, which is the house that comes in the Vampires pack. So this one is with a couple of Sims who are both siblings. There's Caleb VATORE, who is the brother of the household, and then Lilith VATORE is the sister, and they're just both out at the front of the lot at the moment, so you can see them there if you couldn't remember which Sims they were. And they live on the lot called Wolfsbane Manor in Forgotten Hollow, which is the world that came with the Vampires game pack, and it's a little bit dreary in this world, and I also felt like this house was very dreary. It's a bit too big as well for the size of the windows. So I started off with this renovation by just reducing the entire size of the house, really, so you'll see me squishing it in quite a lot, and I just think it really helps to make the outside of the house look a lot more interesting. I also added in a bit of a balcony area to make the back of the house have a bit more to it, because it felt very flat and a bit bland, and there was also a bit of a weird section that just jutted out at the back of the house originally. It was sort of a hallway between the kitchen dining area and the living room, and I just felt like it was a bit of a pointless hallway, so I did end up getting rid of that. And the number of bathrooms, originally in the house there are 3 of those. There's one on the ground floor, and then sort of a family bath on the second floor, and Caleb's room, I believe it is. He has an ensuite. I do end up having to sacrifice the ensuite because there just doesn't end up being really enough space. Or I suppose it's more there isn't a walkway, or there isn't an area in the house that makes sense for there to be an ensuite without reducing the size of one of the other bedrooms too much, so I opted to just get rid of that entirely. But I think having 2 full bathrooms with a shower and tub combo is still sufficient, so if you did want to play in this house, that shouldn't be too much of a problem, hopefully. If you also did want to download this renovation, you can find it on the Sims 4 gallery, just under my EA ID, which is AWayfaringFrog. It's also under the hashtag AWayfaringFrog, and the details of that are in the description down below, as is the information on the build, so the lot that it's on, the size of the lot, and things like that. I didn't actually restrict packs in this renovation that I did. Let me know in the comments if you ever want me to have a go at doing an EA renovation where I restrict packs. At the moment, I've only done the Goth house before this, but I'm just sort of having fun messing around with all of the different packs. And because of Life and Death coming out, I was actually just really inspired by that, and that's one of the reasons I picked the VATORE house. I did also recently get a request to have a go at redoing Vlad's house. I actually did this VATORE one before I got that request, but I think that would be a fun idea too. His house is just an absolute disaster, so I think it would be really nice to have a better looking one, so I'll definitely have to tackle that at some point. But at this stage in the build, we've pretty much got the outside of the house sorted. I'm now just jumping to the interior floor plan and trying to make sure that it still works, considering how much I shrunk it. So the bottom floor ends up staying pretty much as it was before, but then the top floor I have to scoot some things around a bit just due to where the stairs are now. And as you can see, one of the bedrooms just looks way too small. That does also have a ladder instead of a stairway up to the very top room, which just ends up having a coffin in it. So I don't know, you could make that into a little playroom if you wanted. I make that the spare room instead because it's the smallest, and despite there only being 2 Sims living in this house when you load into the game, they did just have a bedroom with 2 beds in it anyway. I'm not really sure why. I know Lilith has the aspiration to have a big vampire family, so I always wondered if that was partly why. So I do end up putting like a little bassinet in there later, but since it was just the spare bedroom, I thought it was fine for that to have a ladder into the loft, and then you could change that up if you wanted to. Also, ignore the fact that I've put those bright green cottage living doors on a few aspects of the house, including the door to the outside on the balcony. It was just a door I picked just to have a door there to remind me to change it later. So I think it's about now that I'm getting the one from Vampires instead to make it match a lot better. I sometimes do that, just kind of put placement furniture and then sometimes placement doors and windows in just to remind me of where I want it if I haven't yet got around to picking the exact one that I want. But I do admit it can look a little bit weird if you don't know that's what I'm doing. So I wasn't considering using that door on the outside. It really was just there to remind me to switch it out later. But for the front door, I ended up going for this one from University, just because I thought it had a bit more fun aspects to it, like having the gold on the letterbox and the door handle, and then it still fit in with the one from Vampires, which had the white frame and then black door. And then it was just different to the other doors since I used the one from Vampires on the balcony and for the back door. So I just liked having a bit of variation there. For the wallpaper as well, I actually cut that out of me testing different ones because I ended up just sticking with the original that was already on the house. It's just a base game wallpaper. I tried out the Vampires one, a few other bricks from other packs, but they were either too pale and then just didn't have the right contrast with all of the white accents going around the house, or they were too busy. Like the one from Vampires has a lot of colour in it, so it just wasn't working for me. So I stuck with just this more plain grey one, and I think it looks really good. So hopefully you agree that it's still a good choice despite it being the one that was originally on the house, and I guess it helps make it more cohesive in that sense, that it didn't just completely change what it was made out of. So from a story perspective, I suppose, the less that you change about the structure, the more realistic it seems. But now I am just starting landscaping here, and I am clearly in my windy path era, because I think this is about the third or fourth house that I've done recently, where I've had this kind of windy path going around to the back of the build into the garden. I just think it looks really cute, and I love being able to use the windy parts to put some landscaping around, so that's also what I'm doing here. The flowers that I picked are from the Horse Ranch expansion pack. Again, this is something that I've been doing in Forgotten Hollow a lot. I just think the colour of the greenery fits really well with the surrounding area in Forgotten Hollow because it's quite a dreary world. So I really like those, and purpley pink ended up being the accent colour for this particular house, which I thought worked really nicely. I did also add in a pond to the back garden, just again for a little bit of extra landscaping. I thought it was nice, and then you could stock it with fish. The vampires can actually change fish into plasma packs, so they don't have to feed off Sims if they don't want. And again, because Caleb has the aspiration of being a good vampire, that seemed like a useful thing to have for him nearby. There is a fishing spot in the world very close by to this lot, but I think it's sometimes nice to just have access to things like that on your lot. And then you can hunt for frogs as well in these ponds, so there's another way of getting plasma packs for your vampires if you needed them. But at this stage we are layering a bit more of the landscaping in. I did cut quite a bit of this out because it was very tedious, and I think I've mentioned this in some of my speed builds before, where I just grab the one thing that I want to use and go around dotting it about, and then grab the next thing, add it to all of the spaces, repeat, and then shuffle some things around. So I did cut most of that out. You can see now that there's a lot more greenery going on, and I even added a lot of rocks within the area. I also wanted to try and include something in this little nook next to the gate that goes into the back garden. So I did play around with having a little fountain or a bird bath here, but in the end I think I just had the bench that I placed down and then a couple of planter pots. And I did include a few items from the Life and Death expansion in the back garden. Because it is a vampire's home, it felt like a reasonable idea to have graveyards. So I added a couple of the grave marker areas, and then a few stones on, just headstones on the top of that. So there's a little bit of gameplay linked to that, I think, as well. I haven't actually played with the Undertaker career in the new pack yet, but I think you can use those to help build your Sims Thanatology skill and things, so it's always nice to have extra activities in the game, I find. So I have added that in. I also included a little barbecue area under the covered portion of the back garden. And in my game, the first time I ever played with The Sims 4 Vampires, Caleb actually autonomously got the job to be a chef, and he's actually a foodie as well in-game. And so because of that, he's just canonically been a chef in my mind. I don't think that is canon, correct me if I'm wrong. So I did kind of design this house, so it had everything that he'd need to do all of that. So I think originally in the house as well, there is already a bar there, but the kitchen looks like it hasn't been touched in a while. There's a few cobwebs about, so I did remove those because I figured if he's a chef, he's probably using the kitchen quite regularly. And then I put a grill in the outside area. It is undercover, so your vampires won't burn in the sun. Although again, I think Caleb is the one who has the trait that means he doesn't burn in the sun, but Lilith doesn't, so if he wants to look after his sister, he's gonna need to make sure that they can sit outside, not in the sun. She also can't eat human food, I don't think, so there's always that. He'll have to find someone else to test out his new dishes on. But we are now decorating the interior, and I thought I'd start with the living room. Because when I first started editing this, it was slightly blue in colour, I thought I'd try and mimic that throughout. So I originally changed the vampire furniture that was already there and put that in the blue swatch. I did really try to use it, but it just wasn't, with the grey accents to those pieces, I just didn't like how it looked with the other furniture in the room, and then the cream just felt a bit too washed out, so I did end up using the life and death assets. I still really love them, and I know I keep using them, but I think they're so much fun. So this does become a very life and death heavy living room, but I think it's really nice, and it pairs so well with the vampire stuff in my mind. So hopefully you don't mind too much that I keep using it, but I think it ends up being a nice living room. I am just trialing a few of the vampire's items here, as you can see, but I will very shortly end up switching that out for the sofas and chair sets from the actual life and death pack. I think it was when I was picking out the chairs for the chess table, I couldn't find the ones from the vampires pack that would match the sofa set. None of the swatches had the dark brown wood and the cream upholstery, which was so annoying. So that was one of the drivers behind me changing everything to the life and death assets. So in my defense, if the Sims team made swatches that matched the other swatches a bit more, I probably would have kept with the vampires items. But I think it looks really nice regardless, and I added a few skill building items in here. So there's the chess table, which I think Caleb autonomously plays on all of the time, at least whenever I visited him. He's always using that. I also included the organ, which I think Lilith might like a lot. I don't believe the Sims actually have any skills when you load into the game, but again, in my gameplay, she's often playing on that, so I suppose she might be a musical sim. I also wanted to include this little bonsai tree because it seemed like a nice fun extra thing for your Sims to do in this room, and with the way that I ended up having to arrange the furniture to fit the organ in, it was a bit bland in this corner, so I thought the bonsai tree helped to break it up a bit, and instead of just opting for a normal decorative plant in-game, having that tree, I guess, just gave the Sims, again, something else to do. It is genuinely the one thing that makes me dislike playing The Sims for the live mode side of things, just because it can get really boring, so I always try and include as much as possible into the houses so that there's stuff to do and skills that you can work on. So even if you're not hoping for your sim to be a flower decorator or anything, it might be nice to have their flower decorating or gardening skill increasing with that little item, just as a side little hobby for them. I actually had a lot of build indecision while I was doing this, so I have cut out quite a bit of that process. I sort of tried to keep in the main bits where I actually changed and kept the furniture, rather than me just plonking stuff down and then deleting it later. So hopefully that helps in the speed build. I don't really know why I struggled so much with it. I think it's partly because in my gameplay, Caleb and Lilith often play quite a big part. They'll end up becoming friends with one of the Sims that I'm playing with or something. So I just really had the perfectionist need to make their house really nice and like a specific way that I really liked. When I'm just building a house for no one in particular, I often find it's a bit easier to choose certain items because I'm not thinking of a sim specifically that I have in game that the house would be for. So I think that maybe contributed to some of my indecision. But it was a while ago now that I built this, so I've slightly forgotten how which rooms I do next and things. But we are now decorating the little hallway, and this is just the entryway to the house. I ended up adding this little desk under the stairs, which I thought would be quite useful. Neither of the Sims have a career that would require working at a computer necessarily, but I think it's really useful to have one in The Sims 4. You basically need it for most things. even if it's not for work. So I did want to include one here, and this was kind of the best place for it without just plonking it in someone's bedroom. So I went ahead and added that. I also included a bit of a gallery wall on the stairs, and then we are now moving into the kitchen, where this is how you access the bathroom that's downstairs. And I didn't record that decoration either of the bathroom. I don't think I recorded either of the bathrooms, to be honest. It was partly just because it was very boring to watch. I just used the items from Vampires, and I was really struggling with the wallpaper for so long that I just thought I'm not even going to include this in the speed build. But they're very bland, in my opinion. I often like decorating bathrooms. I think contrary to popular opinion, I've heard so many simmers hate it, but I genuinely enjoy it most of the time. But these ones I didn't like at all. So honestly, I just cut them out of the speed build. They are in the screenshots at the end of the video though. So if you do want to hang around until then, you'll be able to see the finished bathrooms in the screenshot portion. But at this point, I have finally got the layout of the kitchen that I wanted. I cut so much of this out. I really wanted to include the bar area, but I couldn't figure out where to put it. And having it in the middle of the room here just felt so weird. It felt like there was too much empty space, but I end up popping one of the base game plants in just next to that, and I think it helps fill out the space well enough. So I hope you agree. If you do like what I did here, let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, but for some reason I was just struggling so much with how to fit everything in here in a way that made sense and looked nice. But I think I managed it in the end. So hopefully you agree. I did also include some little shelves above the windows over the sink area, and I think it's really cute. I end up cluttering that up in a little bit, and it just looks really adorable having a few things up there. So I often just feel like it looks a bit stark when the top cupboards just finish, so I just wanted to have some kind of continuation going across the window area. And because they're a bit too big to have upper cabinets in that particular section, this was sort of the best I could do instead. I also brought in a bit more purple into this room, so sort of reflecting the flower arrangements outside, I suppose. I feel like Lilith, whenever I think of her colours, I always think yellow and purple, so I felt like this was quite reminiscent of her style in that sense, whereas Caleb wears quite a lot of red. So his room, as you'll see later, is very red, whereas hers ends up being quite purple. And I think the living spaces are kind of neutral enough that it doesn't look like either one of them particularly has had too much of a say whilst the other hasn't been able to decorate. So I think it's cohesive for both of the Sims in that sense. I actually forgot just how yellow this house is in just as default when I first came to it to edit, because I've redecorated this many years ago before I started doing YouTube, and I just recolored a lot of the furniture more than anything. But so in my head, it's always been that as the default, but obviously I made a new save just to be able to get the original default build to start editing it. And yeah, it was just surprising how much yellow was in the house. I guess maybe that was Lilith's influence, since she wears quite a lot of yellow. But I just sort of wasn't expecting it, I guess. I anticipated it being a lot darker. And just decorating the upper hallway here, you can see that the bathroom is just along the skinny section of the wall. It is just a long bathroom. There wasn't really much that I could do about that if I wanted to keep the 3 bedrooms that they had originally, so that is where I ended up putting it. But it's got everything that you need. It's got the shower tub combo alongside having a sink and the toilet, all from Vampires. And then the next bedroom I decorated was Caleb's. And I was really unsure on the layout in here as well. It's a bit of a funny shape and it's quite big, so it was a struggle to put in enough furniture to fill it up without it being too cluttered. I did also really try to experiment with different rugs, but this combo with the growing together rug and this vampire's bed are just too perfect. So I did cave and go for this. This little round carpet from the Life and Death pack as well works so nicely with that growing together one. Those particular swatches just mesh together so perfectly, so I included that here. And now is about where I sort of had more of an idea of how to lay this out, so I ended up sectioning off where Caleb's bed will be. And because vampires can have the trait where they can't sleep in a bed at all. I ended up putting a coffin where those two armchairs are, and then I moved the armchairs further down in the room instead. So there is still a bit of a seating area, but there's also a bit more gameplay items as a result of me switching a few things around. I also, because I'm still obsessed with this new item, did make sure to give Caleb a little pet crow, so that is just in the corner of the room too. I feel like Caleb would like to have a little pet, and since he loves cooking so much, at least in my head and in my gameplay, maybe he likes to make his little pet crow a few snacks sometimes, so I thought that was nice to include that in there for him. And then, as you can see, I'm just kind of finalising the clutter into the main part of the bedroom. It does still feel quite empty, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's sort of reasonably empty without being too much. But you'll have to let me know what you think in the comments down below. And if you are enjoying the video at this point as well, please do hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so you'll be able to see when I next upload a video. I did also just add in a little plushie, which is from the Vampires game pack, into the corner of Caleb's room. I just thought it was cute and I didn't really know what else to put in that corner, so I did go ahead and include that. Plus, I don't know, maybe it was a gift from Lilith, since she's got that aspiration to have a big vampire family. Maybe she just really likes childish things in that sense. So, I don't know. It just seemed cute, and I still have plushies in my room, so why wouldn't Caleb? I thought it was fun. I did also use a lot of these tarot card paintings in the room. I just think they're so nice. So I made sure to include a few of those. I mostly went for the more red swatches of them, just to be more cohesive with the rest of the room again. And then we are just cluttering up this dresser a little bit more before I end up heading on over to Lilith's room, I believe. I really enjoyed decorating her room. It ends up being kind of similar to the one that I did recently for Cassandra Goth in the renovation that I did of the Goth house. I don't think it's massively similar. I end up using a lot of different assets. It's just I ended up going for a purple theme again. So we are now in Lilith's room, and as you can see, it's already looking quite purple. Her bedroom originally, I think, was actually yellow, but as I mentioned earlier, I just always associate purple with her, and I just felt like there were more assets that are purple that are nicer now than there are yellow ones, and the yellow just looked either way too strong a colour, like a bad kind of yellow rather than a soft one, or it just looked really pale and washed out, so I thought the purple worked much more nicely for her. So I did go ahead and make this the main colour scheme. I do end up bringing a lot more of the brown in through the wooden accents. I thought these little side tables from, I think they're from For Rent, help tie together the silver and that dark wood colour really well. So I enjoyed using those. I don't think I've actually used them before in a build since For Rent came out. And then in my gameplay, Lilith is always quite creative as a sim, and since they don't have skills as default in the game, I just figured I'd go with what I play with for them. So again, I ended up giving her a few more creative things, like with the organ downstairs. I gave her an easel in her bedroom here. I just thought it helped fill up that section of the room a little bit more, and it gave, again, something more useful for your Sims to do rather than just decor. And I thought it just looked really cute, and I used a few items from the artist studio kit as well. So this little stool that I popped a more purple flower on, I thought maybe she had a go at painting that one day. And then in the corner of the room next to the wardrobe, I just included a little poof and some books, so I thought it would be a nice little cozy reading nook for her. And this bed that I picked is actually from Life and Death. It's just a swatch from the more expensive bed out of the two, and I really like it. I think it goes really well with this vampire's wallpaper I've got, although I do end up adding an accent wall using the wallpaper from Crystal Creations, because finally we have some nice purple swatches in the game, so that one's a really good one in my opinion. I think these curtains from Vampires are maybe a bit too pink for this more blue-toned wallpaper, but I think they mesh well together enough. And I liked using the Vampires curtains, partly because they have that sheer part to them that completely covers the window, and since vampires shouldn't be in the sun usually, it kind of made sense from a story perspective. Of course, that isn't a feature in game. As long as they're undercover, they'll be fine, but I kind of liked the gameplay or the make-believe aspect of making sure that the windows are completely covered from any sunlight. But we are now in that spare room that I mentioned, which actually ends up being where Lilith's room was in the original build. They kind of switched just because this room became so much smaller. I wanted to give her the slightly bigger room. And I put 2 beds in here again like it was in the default build, and included a few child baby items because, as I mentioned, Lilith has that big family aspiration for vampires, so I wanted to give her space to be able to start a family. And I guess they can all just pile in here, or she's going to have to move out because there really isn't a lot of space to start a family in this house. I think she wants to end up having 3 children and convert 3 Sims into vampires or something like that, so it's quite a lot. So good luck to her fitting them all in this one little room. But at that point, we are just about at the end of the speed build portion of the video. We will just head upstairs in a little while just to add a coffin up there. I thought, because the original build had one up there, I thought it would be useful to just include that again. So I went ahead and added the one from the Vampires pack. But do let me know in the comments down below what you thought of the build. I'd really love to hear your thoughts. And if you've got any recommendations or ideas of what I should build in the future, let me know. I'll be sure to consider it. And if you did enjoy the build, please be sure to hit that like button. It really does help the channel. And subscribe if you haven't already, and enable notifications so you'll know when I next upload. Thanks so much for watching. I really hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye now!